Hi, YouTube. Regina here from Simply Fundamental. So, today's topic. Today, I want to talk to you about why you should be treating savings like a bill. My view is if you have money to spend, you have money to save. And I know that can sound audacious, but I believe it's true. If the median household income is a little over $80,000, then you have money to save. And so, let's go over the number of reasons why people are struggling financially. People are having a really tough time of saving money, right? So they're having a really tough time with saving money. But it's not like people don't have savings accounts. So 64% of adults in America have a savings account, but 22% of Americans don't have enough to cover an emergency. In fact, if you were to ask Americans, 44% couldn't cover a $1,000 emergency bill from their savings account. So people have savings accounts, but they're just not funded properly. But people certainly have spending accounts. So let's go into it. So, what are the reasons why people struggle financially? Number one would be the cost of living, right? So, a lot of people are struggling with the cost of living, particularly after COVID. So prices have gone up considerably since COVID time. So the amount that people are paying for living expenses, for food, for housing, for transportation, for medical, they've all gone up. They've gone up for everyone. Yet some people are still able to survive. And there are a number of Americans who are making well over $100,000 a year, and they're still living paycheck to paycheck. So something is going wrong. Even if modest income earners are struggling with the cost of living and using it as their primary reason of why they're not able to save, something is going wrong. And so that would lead to the second area of why people are struggling financially, and that would be debt repayment. More and more money since COVID. Interest rates have risen. Home loans, just to get a home loan, will cost you a lot more than it did in the past. And so servicing the debt is going to cost people more money. And we do live in a consumerism society where spending is pushed on us. And especially with social media, people are being targeted to spend more and more money. So consumerism debt is at an all-time high, and car loan debt is at an all-time high, as well as student loan debt is out of control. And so, unfortunately, debt itself is costing people more money. And what is happening is many people are paying the minimum on their debt. They don't have a debt repayment plan set for themselves. So sometimes it's out of necessity, and other times it is because of this third reason, and that would be lack of budgeting habits. Some people are struggling financially because they don't have a clear plan for their money. And so it's either they're spending impulsively or they're really just not spending, they're spending it inefficiently. They're not spending their money in accordance with the amount of income they have coming in. So when we go back to the debt, as far as debt on car loans, a lot of people are spending a lot more money on car loans, and it is not in their best interest. So for instance, not enough people are abiding by the 24/10 guideline, which is putting 20% down, taking out only a 4-year loan, and having it be no more than 10% of your income going towards car loan repayment and insurance and gas. So all your car needs should be no more than 10% of your income going towards all car payments. It's a guideline, it's not necessarily a rule. And a lot of people are going well above that when it comes to budgeting for a car. They're either not budgeting or they think because there is a payment plan, they can afford something, and it pushes them into getting, again, into the number two category with debt repayment being so high. And often people are not realizing where their money is going until their money is gone and they just don't have any more money to spend. And so they blame it on inflation as opposed to where, of course, some of it has to do with inflation, but some of it has to do with not budgeting their money as well. And then the next reason why people are struggling financially would be because of irregular income. So a lot of people are moving over to the gig type of economy and 1099 employment. And unfortunately, personal income for people who are within the gig economy is much lower than people who work a full-time job. So I think it's about the median income for personal income for an individual is 42,000 for someone who may be working in the gig economy as opposed to or someone who's doing hourly wage, as opposed to it being something like 62 k for someone who is working a full-time job, a 9 to 5 job. So the shift more towards the gig economy is meaning people are potentially working less, and sometimes people are doing that because of job instability and they have no choice. And so they go to the gig economy in order to find a job that pays them full time. So, not a shame or blame thing. Don't mean to do that, but in general, this is another reason why people are struggling financially. And then the last reason why people are struggling financially would be behavioral, right? So, and this fits into, a number of things. This could be the consumerism behavior. It could be the I deserve it mentality. And there are other things as well. You only live once mentality. But a lot of when it comes to saving itself, the present day bias generally is one of the biggest things that is a behavioral reason why people will think they'll be able to save later, and so they earmark most of their money to deal with the fact of the cost of living has gone up, or that their bills are so high, or they're not potentially budgeting. And so we're going back to the other categories, but people will tend to prioritize present day spending over saving for the future. And there is the mentality of saving what is left over from a paycheck as opposed to saving and paying yourself first. So a lot of people are not following the guideline when it comes to paying themselves first. They'll spend first, save later, as opposed to save first, spend later. And so saving feels optional to people who treat that, this behavior as present day bias, where they'll spend money on today and not really consider tomorrow. And there's even things where people are feeling struggling with the cost of living. And so you'll hear things about doomsday spending, or people will just say, geez, if they overspend too much on the credit cards, then they'll go and get into bad behaviors and think about something like going into, personal debt and filing for bankruptcy. And they see that as their way out. Unfortunately, when it comes to student loans, there is no way of getting out of student loan debt. And so um, that becomes a problem. But anyway, these are the reasons why people generally struggle financially. Some of them are put upon us with the cost of living being so high. And there are things that people can do with the cost of living, and some of it is painful. Some of it involves making changes to their lifestyle and scaling down their lifestyle because the cost of living is too high, and maybe it gets to a point where they can no longer afford the one bedroom if their median income is the 42,000. Be living in an apartment by themselves, although that is a want, it isn't necessarily a need to have an apartment that you live by yourself if you can no longer afford to live by yourself. And it could mean that you're not saving for your future and you're putting yourself in a precarious situation where if you lost your job and you have no savings, you could then and become houseless, or that's a problem, right? So scaling back some of your lifestyle sometimes is what we need to do when it comes to the cost of living going up so high. It's rationing out the money that you do have and budgeting the money that you do have. And it may mean that you have to scale down your car as well. It may mean you have to pay down, set a debt repayment schedule for yourself, have more of your money going towards debt repayment, and go through a period of sacrifice where you're paying down debt so that you could have more money from your income to be able to use for other things. The next thing would be is you really do have to start budgeting, and you really do have to start um, seeing where all your money is going and being extremely careful about your spending. If you have too much of your money going into the needs category of a car, that car becomes more of a want than a need if you're spending more than you can financially afford on that car. And the next thing, if you're not working enough, even if you are in the gig economy, unfortunately, that may mean that you need to work more. So why do I say that you have to, if you have money to spend, you have money to save? Because in reality, is that present day bias is doing you a disservice. Even when I didn't earn enough in my paycheck, even when my rent was 93% of my income, when my rent was $650 a month and I only made $700 a month, and I had car payment on top of that, and I had student loans on top of that, I still found a way to save first. And how you do that is you save first. And so in this way, it meant that I had to go out and earn more money. I had to go through a period of sacrifice and come up with ways of earning income over the weekends. And so much of my life early on, it meant me working two jobs, and it meant me working on the weekends so that I could have a portion of my salary going to save first. And so how do you save first? Saving first means before you have money for spending, before you have money for bills, before you have money in your pocket, it goes towards savings. So a percentage of my salary went automatically for retirement. A percentage of my salary then was funneled into three buckets. I had my salary automatically going into, a portion of it went into savings, a portion of it went into for bills, and a portion of it went into spending money. In the beginning, my spending money was very low because I needed to prioritize savings. And I really didn't have as much for spending, but for me, my spending meant on needs. So that was the discretionary spending on how much I got to spend on food versus the discretionary that I had for going out for concerts and things of that nature. So I automatically saved. And from my savings, I had money funneled into investment accounts, and I had money funneled into savings account. In the beginning, I was not saving as much. So you could do savings as automatic and you can pick an amount. And generally, it should be either a percentage of your income or a fixed dollar amount. And so if you're earning the median individual personal income, let's say you're earning the $62,000 a year, and let's just round it down to an easy $60,000 a year, that's $5,000 a month. Then if you're trying to save 10% of that, that would mean putting $500 aside. Or let's just say you decided you wanted to save a little bit more and you want to do 600, and you want 300 of that going into your retirement and 300 of it going, so 300 would get funneled out immediately going into retirement each month before I would get my paycheck. And then once after tax dollars came in, I would see what I would have left. And let's just say my monthly take home was 3,600. Then I would choose an amount from there, and that would be 300 a paycheck. I could do 300 a paycheck from the 3,600, and that would go into my savings account. Then a big portion would go into paying my bills, and a big portion would go into paying, giving my money for spending money. When you automate your spending, you are going to ensure that you have money being saved for your future, being saved for emergencies. So this takes the the allure of you from being able to spend it. If you're doing it automatically where it's immediately being funneled in, then the risk of you using the money for, let's say, paying a bill is going to go down. So you want to make sure that the money that you do save is not easily accessible. So for me, I had it going into an account that I didn't even have a debit card for, so that then from there it would go into that bank account, would then get funneled into brokerage accounts and into money market accounts. So it's earning a higher interest rate. You want to make sure you do that with your money. So once it's automated, once you figure an amount, then the next thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you don't change it no matter what. Savings is non negotiable. It is something that you need to do the same way as you need to, as far as you need to be able to have food in your stomach, and you need to be able to find a way to house and clothe yourself. Um, Even if it means that you're going to be living in a car, there's things you need to do. When I say some people are resorting to living in a car as opposed to paying for housing, but savings, treat savings as a non negotiable need. And then it happens. And then lastly, you want to track it. So you want to see where you're going. You want to monitor to ensure that the money in your account is earning interest for you. And as you're monitoring, you also, as you're tracking and doing your finances, you may want to keep it as a line item on your bills. So, for instance, if you are taking home the $3,600 a month and you are budgeting your $3,600, the $300 that you're putting aside for each paycheck, um, you would put that within your tracking and within your budget, or the $300 a month that you would be putting aside. You want to track it in your budget, and you're going to monitor and see how it grows. Now, why is this such a successful strategy? Why does it work so much? It works because first of all, you're taking the the present day bias is gone. So you're you take the discipline of saving money. You're doing it automatically. So it helps you build that savings muscle, and um, it helps you make sure you're saving, right? So once I started building that savings muscle, I started to feel like I was a saver. And so it made me feel, and it will make you feel like you're doing something, and you won't feel as stressed or concerned about money as time goes on. The more you do it, the more disciplined you are, the better you get at it, and the more enjoyment you get from savings. The other thing that it does is it helps you grow your wealth, right? So as you are savings, so the $300 you're doing every month in your retirement, the $300 that you're doing every month in your savings, as you're doing that, you'll see your money growing, and it will get you excited to want to potentially look for other ways to save money, figure out ways to potentially increase your savings. It'll make you feel a little bit better about working, even if you are in a job where, you're having to work extra like I did. Like I had to work more than full time to be able to keep that savings. It made me feel better about doing it because it wasn't just all going to bills. And then the other thing that it does is, because you're saving, you're not going to feel as guilty about the money that you do spend. So once the saving is down pat, once the saving is, under control, and you're saving in your retirement, and you're saving in a savings in an emergency account, then the money you have left over after you're paying your bills is yours for the spending. So you don't feel guilty, particularly as your income starts to rise. And if you do this early on, like I did when I first was paying off student loan debt, and I was, living in an apartment that was truly high in bills. The fact that I was saving made me feel okay about working the extra. And then the other thing that it helped me do, it helped me look for more ways to increase my savings rate, increase what I was doing. And it eventually led me to go back in a position where I was no longer living by myself. We became a dual income household, and that ended up pushing my bills down, and it ended up being able to allow me to save more. So it ends up helping you when you become a saver look for other ways. It ends up helping you to combat the cost of living, because as you start budgeting, as you start tracking, as you are watching your savings and your investments grow, spending that you're doing guilt free, it still becomes something that you're more careful about doing. And I don't know, savings for me became something that became motivating. And yeah, it helped me reduce my cost of living overall. It helped me figure out ways to save. And one of those ways was to become a dual income household. Another things it allowed us to do is to become a one car family. So that was saving. Anyway, I'm getting long winded, over 21 minutes, and I might have to film this again just because I went over too much. I'm hating these long videos.